Nowadays, I typically spend my time playing slow turn-based games, grand strategies, or isometric CRPGs. But my video game origin story begins with the Sega Genesis. Streets of Rage 2 will forever be in my top 5 games of all time, and instilled in me a love of classic side-scrolling beat-em-ups. So, I was naturally excited by the release of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Rita's Rewind. The story is simple. The Rangers' old nemesis Rita, now more cyborg than lady, is once again up to no good. This time she devised a plan to teleport herself back to the 90's, where she can team up with her former self to defeat the Rangers for good. That's literally the entire plot, and that's okay. The best plot for any beat 'em up is just get out there and kick some ass because, I don't know, evil's afoot or something. And, at the same time, no one ever watched the Power Rangers on TV for the writing, so this very basic storyline in this case somehow fits perfectly. The pixel art is excellently crisp and vibrant, with each Ranger popping as they spout their expected stereotypical lines. Jabs are quick, aerial attacks have a flourish, and the Rangers generally look fantastic flipping around the screen. The visuals really do feel like a classic arcade game with a top-notch facelift. More importantly, this game crushes the vibe. Recent gaming trends have proven 4K graphical fidelity isn't everything, and that holds true here. Starting in the intro, we have cool dance moves, motorcycles, and animal-themed Zords. Levels cover all the classics. A high-tech training area, the quarry, the very 90's area juice bar, a poorly managed nuclear waste site, a haunted theme park, and more. All while adding a lovely 90's stereotypical touch to everything. The putties are clowns in one phase, and punks in the next, and breaking trash cans nets you milkshakes and burgers, all the essential ingredients for the best childhood adventure. My only gripe, and it's a small one, comes from the game opening with the CRT filter on by default, which I actually hate. I love the nostalgic art style, but I got a nice OLED for a reason, so I immediately turned it off. That's a preference for me, but in case you didn't check that setting yourself, there are a few CRT overlay options there to choose from. Complementing the visuals is a punchy, rock-themed soundtrack, which was a big deal for me. If you grew up watching the TV show, you know that the theme song goes unreasonably hard with a face-melting guitar solo about 10 seconds in, so I could not be happier to hear the theme song pulling no punches. If I was to nitpick, I would say the level music could go even harder and have a touch more variety, but again, that's just personal preference. Pair a solid soundtrack with some crunchy punches and whooshing dodges, and this game sounds great. And if you did watch the show as a kid, you get the added bonus of unlocking some memories you didn't even know you had. In my case, I of course remembered more obvious things like the Megazord, but Goldar, Rita's staff being thrown on the ground to make bad guys grow, and of course Bulk and Skull, were nostalgia directed right into my veins that added a little extra to a playthrough. When it comes to combat, you're allowed 4 players maximum at any time on most platforms, or 6 players maximum on the Switch. As for online play, check for your system specifically, because I know the goal is to make online co-op across all platforms, but on release that is not the reality yet. As you progress through the chapters, the game rotates between side-scrolling beat-em-up sections, rail shooter sections, and of course, Megazord battles, with each playing distinctly differently. Of course, the side-scrolling is the game's bread and butter, and after a short optional tutorial you'll be introduced to infinite putties to bash. Controlling your character is nothing new for the genre. You can punch, string punches together for combos, double jump, dash, dodge, strike upward from the ground, and downwards from the air. No reinvention of the wheel here. Enemies will start basic, tossing themselves on your sword or running off bridges by accident, eventually branching into different forms, with some enemies blocking attacks, dashing, or carrying bombs and explosive barrels. For every baddie you knock out, a portion of your special meter will fill, ultimately allowing you to clear the screen if you are ever overwhelmed. Several of these mechanics blend really well. Stringing a combo of punches together knocks enemies in the air, allowing for an aerial uppercut finisher when utilized correctly. Additionally, dodges place you right on the backside of an enemy, ready to strike again, allowing some quick 1-2 punches on both sides of your less agile foe. But outside of these mechanics, I found that combat lacked a certain level of freedom. It's great that dodging sets me up perfectly when I'm right next to an enemy, but when dodging to get closer to an enemy or boss, I often found myself punching away from the direction I was approaching. In addition to this, certain maneuvers are capped in a way I think take away from the game. For example, you can only dodge 2 times in a row. Not normally a big deal, but a certain bird boss teleports to you and attacks 3 times in a row, meaning even with good timing you have to find a way other than the dodge button to dodge. Other weird design choices include not allowing you to dodge in the same direction twice, and making enemies impervious to damage when they're on the ground, even though there's a ground pound attack. Too many of the attacks and animations feel like their own singular move, as opposed to a cohesive moveset. You can strike upwards, but it has to be the one thing you're doing. If you're in the middle of a combo, it's not happening. This breaks the flow in stringing attacks together and gave the feeling every so often that I don't have total control of my character. And when paired with enemies being impervious when knocked down, there can be what feels like a hitch between attacks, or you can be left waiting a couple seconds for an enemy to get up just to deliver one final punch. Overall, the options to attack enemies is limited. Nothing is particularly wrong with it, but this particular system of combat lowers the ceiling for how good a player can be, while conversely making the game extremely accessible to newer players. A trade-off I'm not thrilled about, but I'm sure the developers prefer it this way because most of this is remedied by the sheer volume of combatants. As a single player, issues can stand out. With 2 players, these issues are minimized. With 6 players, the sheer pandemonium masks the simple fighting system with flippin' bodies, flashing colors, and special moves going off left and right. More than 1 player is clearly the way to play. I just wish they left a little more headroom for a super skilled player or twosome, even if I don't personally fit that description. To end on a positive note, I will say boss fights stand out as pretty damn fun in this section. The bosses have fun themes and unique attack mechanics, meaning you'll have to utilize your entire knowledge of the game to stay alive. As for the shooter section of the game, I have almost exclusively positive things to say. It handles as you would expect, the enemies are varied, the power-ups are impactful, the screen fills with explosions and rockets, it's classic arcade chaos. It's not particularly varied, but it feels like a high-intensity side portion of every chapter, and the developers made these sections just the right length in my opinion, so it feels like a fresh change-up from the side-scrolling, but at the same time never drags. Then we have the Megazord sections. Oh, the Megazord sections. If I had to sum up this section briefly, I would just say missed opportunity. Controlling the Megazord is just the D-pad and 2 punch buttons. Bosses always have the same gimmick, firing at you from a distance while you dodge and close the gap. The punches from the Zord aren't particularly impactful, but at the same time you can punch almost as fast as you can bounce between the 2 buttons. This means when you do get close, you can land like 8 punches if you mash hard. Not really a problem, more of just an odd bit of freedom in comparison with the combat feeling rigid in the side-scrolling portions. Ultimately, you fill up the bar, unlocking the Super Megazord to finally slay the boss. After a button mashing sequence, of course. Visually and thematically, it is a fitting end to a stage, but I can't help but wish they did more for these sections. They could have made more fighting options from the first-person Zord view, or gone in a completely different direction. Maybe something like returning to a side-scrolling viewpoint with each character controlling their own Zord. Maybe at the end of the round, all your Zords connect, and whoever got the highest score in that section would get to control the Megazord in a 1v1 battle with the boss. I don't know, I'm not a game dev, but I know 2D fighters with the Megazord have happened, so it could happen again. Ultimately, the Megazord section feels like a glorified minigame, lacking much of the charisma of the other 2 sections. The entire game can be played in just a few hours, with replayability options stemming around unlocking the Green Ranger upon completion of the game, extra difficulty options after winning the game on hard, and the 3 check marks you can earn for each level. Add in the couch co-op nature of the game and you might get more like 10 hours out of this game instead of the 2 that it takes for one singular campaign. As for whether that's a good deal for $35, that's up to you. I would give Rita's Rewind a 6 out of 10 for single player, but an 8 out of 10 if you have friends. So I guess I have to split the difference and give it a 7 out of 10. If you're looking for a fun game to go halfsies on with your college buddies for the weekend, this game rocks. If you're looking for a skill-based combat system to pour hours into perfecting, look elsewhere. Regardless of your decision, if you made it this far, please subscribe so you can catch my future videos and reviews. And don't forget to comment how you felt about the game or any other games you'd love to see me review. With that being said, I thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.